radar, it stands for. Came out in World War II, known then as IFF, Identification Friend or Foe. So basically, they see you on their basic radar, which actually wasn't very good, but then invented this means of interrogation, so your airplanes had this means to respond to an interrogation, and if you gave the correct response, clearly you were a friend and you weren't going to get shot down. If you gave the incorrect response, you weren't a friend, and then you were, well, I wouldn't say you would get shot down, but you're liable to be shot down. So it started off as a military device, but then quite quickly people went, hey, we can use this, it's pretty good. So if I talk about a primary surveillance radar, which would be primary meaning the first sort of radars, all I get from that is a bearing and a range. So I get range and bearing from a primary radar, and I would have a screen with lots of little dots to show me where the aircraft was. It needs the radar or the radio signal to go there and back, and it's got to reflect on something and come back as a reflection, so the signal coming back is really, really weak. Or I've got to put an awful lot of power in. Remember, we said double the distance of a radar, you have to increase the power by a factor of 16. So there's a lot of power needed in radars. So they quite like secondary radar, because what happens is you interrogate and the aircraft generates a new radio signal to come back. So the energy levels are much lower. Plus, we can send more information back. So SSR is going there. Some countries, if you haven't got FSSR, then you're not allowed in because they don't use the primary radar at all. Everyone must have secondary radar. So if you've got secondary radar, you get blips, so there's still range and bearing from that, but there is information. Now the information used to be just your squawk and your altitude. That's the basic SSR. That's moved on with Mode S. So there's more and more information going on. I went to one in the Emirates when I worked there, and they've got, no longer does it show your squawk, but that's been converted into call sign, so that's a lot easier for the controller. But it's got your speed, your destination, your height, your track is written there in digits rather than in trying to interpret stuff. So it's you know, a lot easier for the controller. And they didn't have primary radar at all. But it does need cooperation, if you like, because the airplane needs to respond. So if you're talking about a military device, to see the enemy coming in, then it wouldn't work, because clearly the enemy is not going to make a response, and therefore you wouldn't be seen. So primary radar we still need for military. We need that phase array area. Remember, the very first day we had the big radar dish, and on top of it was the area with all the lines on it, which is the phase array aerial. And we do have a problem with side loads because it is a directional aerial, and we have to sort that out. So I'll talk about that now. So that's the transmission that you're trying to send. Unfortunately, there are side loads. Now, I know that looks a bit funny. I cannot help that. Doesn't matter what you do, it's still going to look that way. But this is what we call the interrogation load. You are here in your airplane. This is going round and round on the radar dish. The interrogation comes and you make a response to it. The problem is that when you get interrogated by that side lobe, you will respond to it. And there are lots of side lobes. Remember, we said there are loads of them. So So all the way as that's going round, you are going to appear as if you are in all of those places, because you're responding to every side load that comes along. And obviously that's of no value to the controller, because you appear to be everywhere. So they have another pulse, which is shaped something like that goes around with it. That is known as a P2 pulse. Perhaps I should have said that is known as the P1 pulse. So the P1 pulse is the one that we want. This P2 pulse is designed to be stronger than any side load. So when your aircraft gets an interrogation, say from a side lobe, before it replies, it asks a question. Is that interrogation stronger than the P2? And if the answer is no, it doesn't respond. So I will not respond to any side lobes. However, when this one comes round, it asks that question, is the P1 stronger than the P2? The answer is yes. So it will respond. That is known as side lobe suppression. Side lobe suppression. So how does this interrogation come? Very simply, in a series of 3 pulses. Well, 3 pulses plus a framing pulse. But these, framing pulse and an end pulse, those are like saying, this is the beginning of my transmission, this is the end of my transmission. I'm going to talk to you, I've finished talking to you. First pulse is the P1 pulse, that's the interrogation pulse. The second pulse is the P2 pulse, which is the one that is there for side lobe suppression. And the third one is about give me your altitude, or if it's not there, then I don't want your altitude. And that is going round, and they're spaced, and that is that. How does your aeroplane respond? Let's get rid of that one, we don't need that. But your aeroplane responds with potentially a lot of responses. The framing pulses, they will always be there. This is the start of my reply, this is the end of my reply. These ones will be there only if they're required to be there to make up your squawk. So, say your squawk is 4317, just for example. Then each of these A's, there are 3 of them, will be used to make that first number. The B's will be used to make that number, the C's to make that one, and the D's to make that. So there are 3 of each. And their values 1, 2, and 4. So this one has got a value of 1, for example. This one has got a value of 2, and this one has got a value of 4. So in this case, I have to make up a 4. So clearly, I will transmit only that one. The first 2 pulses won't be transmitted. With this one, I need to make up a 3, so it will be using the B pulses. But to make a 3, I will transmit those 2, but not the 4. Get it? And to transmit the 7, then I need to transmit them all. So that's how the transmission works. You're not going to be asked about that, but that's how that works. So it's quite straightforward. sides here, they're largely irrelevant, but this number there is not. Because we're using the number 7 rather than the number 9 to make up our numbers, we can't have as many numbers. You might think, oh, 4 numbers, I can get 9,999 combinations. But because the maximum number is 7, I can actually only have 4,096 combinations. And sadly, that does get asked quite a lot. 4,096 is a vital number until you've passed your exam, and then you'll forget it. So I'm going to skip this because this is just how you're doing it. The bit that you need here, that displayed to the nearest 100 feet. So if your altimeter's reading and 53 feet, that will read as 100 feet. So it's just displayed to the controller to the nearest 100 feet. What selections do you have on your box? Well, on and off, and then you've got a standby. So standby allows the equipment to warm up, and it's coming really from older type equipment that used to take a while to get warm. Standby, but it's warming up, but you're not transmitting. So it's accepting the interrogations, but not doing anything with them. Once you switch it to on, then it will start to make the responses.
What does it mean, accepting interrogations?
It means it's taking them in. It's listening, but not replying.
Okay, but usually the transponder is listening what?
It's only while it's in standby. Once we switch it to on, it then starts to reply as well. Get that?
So what's... I don't understand what... because we will not get any information from the standby.
This is your aircraft equipment, and you're being interrogated by the station on the ground. So here's the interrogations, but in standby it won't transmit. So you have this really while you're on the ground, because what you don't want to do is be transmitting and damaging people. That's where it's all coming from, really, because it's still coming under the term radar.
So what's the use of it? Standby. Never used it.
Change the code, isn't it? Yeah. Or you can use it to change the code, but even then you don't need to just change the code. It's coming largely because it is a radar, and in radars we have a standby mode, because if you're in normal transmit mode, you do serious damage to people, and this is historically is still radar. It's a secondary radar, but radar.
So can we just go from off to on?
If you wish.
So or put standby. I don't get why they put standby then.
Because you're not transmitting.
Just put it off then.
Not alternate, but altitude. So on old aeroplanes, you might see the word mode Charlie. So it depends on the age of the aeroplane what you're going to see there, but it will reply to altitude. More modern equipment has got a self-testing, so it will test itself. And then we have this other position known as ident. Sometimes the controller has a problem seeing you on the screen, and they will ask you to ident, and that will highlight you in some way such that you're easy to see. And I don't like this slide because that is the highlighted view, and I'm going, oh. But it will be highlighted in some way that, okay, you're different. Codes. I think we're probably okay with codes 7.5, 7.6. I imagine we're okay with the codes. I'm not going to dwell on them. Yeah, we talk it all the time. Errors with the system then. So ICAO standards are to 300 feet. when you're climbing out to go en route, air traffic need to know that your mode Charlie is accurate. So they will ask you for a mode Charlie check and may say, call me passing this level. So on the way up, you will go call them up and say, hello, blah, blah, passing flight level 70, no. And they will be looking at their altimeter reader. If that reads within the 300 feet of 7,000 feet, then the road charge is okay.
So minus is 300.
Pardon?
You should read out minus 300.
300 feet. Feet. That's supposed to be a little symbol that we use for feet, that little apostrophe.
You can do plus or minus, just with it.
Yeah, plus or minus. If you have an error, try again. Deselect, have another go. If it doesn't work, then you might be asked to squawk all the zeros, which is an indication then that your mode Charlie readout is not valid. Some states have a requirement for 200 feet and UK is one of those. Problems with it? If aeroplanes are too close together, then messages get jumbled up. And it would be like a garbled message. Two people speaking together, you can't make out what each of them are saying. So it becomes a garbled noise. And the magic number for that is 1.7 nautical miles. If they're 1.7 nautical miles distance through there, then you're going to have, or the person who's controller is going to have a garbled message. Fruiting is when your airplane might make a response. So you've been interrogated and you've made a response. Your response from the aircraft isn't directional. The interrogation's directional, but your response is omnidirectional. So another SSR somewhere else might pick up your response. And clearly that was an undemanded response. So that is known as fruiting. Responding to the wrong ground station. Mode S is where we're going. So currently Mode S and the old SSR it's been done so that they are compatible, but the SSR will disappear as Mode S develops. So they're just an interim measure, if you like. But the Mode S has got massive capability, lots and lots of addresses. 6.7. Now, they say that's massive. I remember when the internet first came out and people would talk about its massive capability, and within a couple of years we were all whinging because it just wasn't enough. And no matter how fast and super fast we go, we're always whinging that it's not fast enough, aren't we? It's just not good enough. So I kind of imagine it's going to end up being the same with this, because they'll find more and more uses for it. For surveillance, it's good because we can go over horizon. Radar is VHF or above, limited by the curvature of the Earth. If we go data linking, this is a data linking system, we can have ground stations, we can have satellites, and so we can get surveillance over a much wider scale. And more accurate too, because the position of where you are is actually coming from your FMS. It's saying, I am here, which is a lot better than a radar range and bearing. So the accuracy is going to improve tremendously. We can have messages, and they are anticipating really whether whatever system it goes through, when it goes through this or ACARS, that before long the only verbal communication will be clearances to land and take off. Everything else apart from that will probably come effectively by text. Compatible with tests? Obviously compatible with the old stuff, which will disappear, but its accuracy is much greater within a 100-foot range, elevation allegedly 25 feet, and 5 minutes of arc, which is really small. Remember, BOR is 5 degrees, so it's 60 times better. Where do we need to know? We don't need to know that. We have the ability for mode S or all, so I can make a transmit. Well, the ground station, can make a transmission to everyone, or I can call to a specific person. So that's the 2 bits you really need to get from there. So there may have been some message that everyone needs to know. Unlikely, perhaps. Or mainly it's transmissions to individuals. Even to the point where individual aircraft, so this Cessna, whatever it is, there's a number, has an address. You know, immediately I'm going, oh, well, you can use that for policing then. You'll know whether this aeroplane has a certificate of airworthiness, for instance, and know that it's flying. I think it's going to get used for an awful lot of stuff as time goes on. What do you need? You need boxes. You're going to get bogged down by boxes of various sorts, and that is SSR. It's been a rush.